Hello, I'm Matt Simon, Senior Analyst of TABB Group. I'm here today with Jonathan White, Vice President of Business Development of North America at Viteos, and we're going to be talking about the shining a light on shadow accounting. And that's something that's a relatively interesting and new topic. When we talk about what is actually outsourced shadow accounting, what are we referring to, Jonathan?
Well, just to sort of clue everybody in, I mean, shadow accounting isn't particularly new, right? So particularly in North America, the evolution of shadow accounting from the flight to fund administration post-crisis to the fact that many of the larger hedge funds in North America were self-administered prior to that. But the business model in North America is to run a shadow set of books against the fund admin of record. And the fund admin record, of course, is running books for the fund. This is primarily for the fund manager themselves.
So when we talk about that, what is the differences between maybe they could be subtle from what I understand, between what some other people may refer to as shadow administration versus shadow accounting, or using an outsourced shadow accounting provider? Right,
so you know, people define shadow accounting differently. There's you could run a shadow nav on a spreadsheet, for example, and some of the smaller funds try and validate what their fund administrator is doing by doing so, right? Once a month type exercise. But as funds grow larger and more complex, the shadow accounting function becomes less about the nav, well, just as much about the nav as it is about the components to get to the NAV in terms of reconciliation, pricing, valuation, affirmation, confirmation, all of the OTC processing environment. The post-trade life cycle, we call it, it falls under the full shadow accounting definition.
So you guys wrote a white paper on operational efficiencies. There's a lot of drivers today about why we are shining a light today on this topic. What would you say are some of the highlights from why we should be thinking about this more today?
I think there's a continued trend towards shadow accounting. We see sort of two separate groups in this particular white paper in this topic. So what we do is we see the desire to institutionalize the platform, particularly at smaller managers. We're seeing smaller managers come to us and think about implementing this shadow set of books and records. And that brings an inherent complexity in terms of the integration and how they're going to implement that and run that on a day-to-day basis.
So it's an ideal solution for smaller hedge funds. Is there somewhat of a size that you guys are focused on?
No, I think we fall into, I mean, from an outsourced shadow accounting perspective, it tends to be the $500 million plus type hedge funds that, and I don't want to discount the smaller guys because we actually do work with a couple of startups that are looking to ramp up very quickly and do not want to build institutional grade from day one. They want to basically have access to scalability, customization, and automation to gain that efficiency so that they can run lean in-house and focus on performance whilst we help them through the operational and accounting challenge through growth. But we also have a lot of conversations and clients in the $1 billion to $10 billion space, maybe a little larger from time to time. But what we find is sort of $20 billion plus managers are thinking more enterprise. But in that 1 to 10 band, managers are looking to become more alpha-centric in their operational approach. They want to focus on risk. They want to focus on treasury, financing, to add value to the book of business, and therefore are looking at options to think about how they could outsource the heavy lift from an operational and accounting perspective of having to run in-house books and records around that.
But I would think in the larger funds, whether or not that's a billion-plus club, they would have very different and unique circumstances. Are you hearing from them that they have different requirements as they look at an outsourced shadow accounting solution?
Yeah, I think in the larger funds, the reaction to outsourced shadow accounting solutions is primarily because of their business objectives.
But customization becomes an important factor.
Right. So the customization, the ability for an outsourced provider like Viteos to bring in a solution that's molded around their business. So if you think about a $5 billion fund, for example, they've been around for a period of time. They already have set processes in place and they've already built a level of technology or have certain components that they want to retain. So it's important that they're able to retain those whilst gaining the benefits of pushing the heavy lift onto a service provider, and then being able to focus ahead. And that customization is critical in not just providing custom reporting, for example, but also being able to feed downstream systems. And then it's also the agility around that that helps with the scalability factor, because the ability to adapt to the business needs of the hedge fund as it adapts. So integration of risk, for example, or enhancement of risk, looking at financing, for example, and going beyond just the SLA that's defined at the beginning of the engagement is critical.
Yeah, and I would think new rules also become a major part of this in terms of being able to comply, and it just brings a whole new wealth of information and standardization of the reporting and what they need to do to comply.
Yeah, the regulatory environment certainly has, I think, created more sensitivity for some managers. That, you know, Form PF, for example, showed some areas where perhaps they weren't as mature as they thought they were going to be, and therefore just saying, well, we can continue to build around that, or we can look for an alternative solution. The regulatory environment, even from an operational perspective, is just adding more and more burden and complexity to the manager, which starts to put more pressure on internally, and they have a choice. They can either go in an in-house solution and staff around it and build around it, or they can go to a provider whose core competency is certain functions. Then they can put the responsibility of those functions on there and be free to move ahead.
Okay, great. So we found out today there's a lot of reasons why managers should be looking at outsourced shadow accounting platforms. I appreciate you, Jonathan,
Thank you
for
very
coming
much.
in today. Again, this is Jonathan White, VP of Business Development at Viteos, and I'm Matt Simon, Senior Analyst at TABB Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you.